didn't read it at the entrance. I didn't even read anything. I'm just following you. You didn't read at the entrance. No, seriously, you need to put it at the.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. We're having a good time.
Thank you.
Bailey Castle. That's M-O-T-T-E, Motte. Now, we're not entirely sure which came first, the Motte or the Bailey, but given that both are pretty integral to the castle's design, they were probably built within very short proximity to each other. And if we were guessing, we'd probably guess the Bailey came first. So this is the inner Bailey. The Motte is the artificial mound.
I'm going to do this.
Durham has a reputation for being quite hilly. Some of you might have even worked that out today for the first time. But this is completely artificial, specifically, and it was for defensive purposes. Now, in the 11th century, the keep would have been entirely made of wood, and it would have been square as well. The only way to access the keep would have been a set of wooden stairs, where, if you saw your enemy approaching, you could quite literally just burn the stairs behind you. How you got down again is another matter. I'm sure they had a ladder or a pulley system, but you can kind of see the flaw within the original design of the keep. Now, stonework was originally added in the 14th century by Bishop Hatfield. When the keep was restored in the 1830s for the purpose that it's still used for today, they tried to use as much of the exterior stonework as possible. So that's actually a pretty good impression of what the keep would look like from the exterior in the 14th century. Now, why would we see what we see today? Because we kind of I don't mind as well. Like, if you'd rather stand while I'm talking, don't worry about it. So I've said this to a couple of people. If you would prefer to stand, that's absolutely fine. It's fine, but don't tell people to sit down when they're too scared. That's the classic one. So, welcome to the Norman Chapel. Essentially, we're not entirely sure when the chapel was first built. We know it's between 1070 and 1080. If you want to sit, there's a whole bench at the front, but that's completely up to you. You're fine. So, we're not entirely sure when the chapel was built, but we know it's between 1070 and 1080. Now, given that the castle wasn't built until 1072, it was likely to be the latter half of that decade, so probably around 1076 to 1078. But we're not actually entirely sure, but we do estimate what would give official dates for when the chapel was built. Now, it was a consecrated space from the moment it was built, and it is a consecrated space today, but there is a bit of a blind spot in the history, so I'll try and take you through all of it specifically. Now, you guys came through this entrance just here, but that's not actually the original entrance to the chapel. The original entrance to the chapel is that black grating area. What I would say as well, if you ever can't see, I get everybody to have a look the moment I finish talking, so don't worry about straightening your neck or anything. This is the original entrance to the chapel, the black grated area just there. Anyone that can see though, do you notice it's quite short, isn't it? It's quite small. I'm 5'7" and I have to bend down to get in that. Now, whilst people historically were much shorter on average, we do actually believe that that was deliberate and it was to encourage people to bow as they came into the chapel. When we say people were much shorter on average, William the Conqueror was 5'9" and he was considered exceptionally tall. His wife was something like 4'5", so that's why people were much shorter on average. Now, obviously, there would have been windows in the 11th century chapel, but they would have been much smaller and they wouldn't have had any glass at all. If you've ever seen kind of medieval designed windows that are about the size to shoot an arrow through, that's the kind of thing we're talking about here. These would have been purely for defensive purposes. Now, they were enlarged and the glass was added in the Victorian era specifically. Now, you see where the very, very bright light is emitting from, where there's kind of almost ominous, shall we say, entrance way of the wall. That is what we call a sally port. Now, sally ports are deliberately designed much thinner interior and exterior walls, where essentially, if the castle became under siege, you could quite literally just knock it down and make your escape. Obviously, take my word for that, but that's how a sally port works specifically as well. Now, we do believe that the interior walls of the chapel were painted at some point. However, we do believe that the pillars were never painted at all. Obviously, don't hack away at them, but please, you are welcome to have a feel of them. They're really interesting to feel. Now, the pillars are made of sandstone, and you can kind of see these kind of, shall we say, iconic swirly patterns. That's what the pillars are known for. That's completely naturally occurring. It's not paint at all, and it's the result of iron deposits in the sandstone specifically. Now, we're not entirely sure what every single carving means, but we know they're also to know when members of the bishop's household would have stood. I'm going to try and take you through the main ones. So if you're at the front, the easiest place to see it is here, or at the front over here, so to speak. Now this is the oxen. Now oxen represents hard-working preachers or bishops, so this is where the bishop would have stood during the services and ceremonies. Then we also have the carving of a snake. Now snakes might seem like a very odd symbol to have in an early Christian chapel, as to be honest, snakes are often associated with the devil due to Eve's temptation in the Garden of Eden. But they do have dualistic meaning. It's the second meaning probably why they're here. So snakes shed their skin, thus they're often associated with eternal life, and that's why we think that's there. Now the entire back pillar, it's on most of you guys' left actually, but it's on my right. That entire pillar depicts the story of St. Eustace. Now, St. Eustace was a Roman pagan and general who had what we call a conversion experience. Christ appeared to him in the body of a stag, and thus he converted to Christianity and became one of the early Christian martyrs. Now, of course, you got out of this door, so I can tell the joke. Hannah, the tour guide who trained me, she used to have a joke that that stag is one that's the exact replica of one on a bottle of Jägermeister. Personally, I think she just has her toes on and she still says it today, but I like the thought of all of you going home and checking, I'm not going to lie. Specifically. We've obviously got lions in the chapel, we've got 4 of them in total, but the easiest place to see it is definitely in the centre, on most of you guys' right and my left. Now lions, they represent in any kind of form of Christian architecture the king of the beasts, specifically. So they're often associated with Jesus Christ, specifically Jesus Christ's ascension into heaven as well. We've got some laymen scattered around the chapel. The easiest place to see it is actually here, but you can see quite a few on the back pillar as well, on the left. They're not monkeys, as children often ask me. They're to represent men in paradise, and that's where laymen would have stood during the services and ceremonies. Now, very few of you can see this, so I'm going to point it out now, finish talking, and then I'll get you all to stand up, but just so you know where it is. It's directly here. And the best place to stand it is actually where you're standing, sir, but that's the best place to see it, definitely. But that is the carving of a mermaid. Now, we believe that that's the earliest carving of a mermaid in the entire country. Why? Because they were extraordinarily rare in Norman and English architecture. They were a lot more common in Italian, hence why we don't say the world, certainly, but in this country it's actually quite likely that it is. It's to represent women in paradise, and that's where women would have stood during the services and ceremonies as well. Now, we talked about our friends from the RAF earlier, just outside, and they're honoured on the plaque here, and the question is why. Now, in the early modern England period, so 1500 to 1700 is the period we're talking about, the Tunstall Chapel was built, which is the next stop on the tour. But that was kind of the reason why this chapel was no longer used, and it kind of fell into repute. It was no longer a consecrated space. And there was even, we even have like records of people coming in and finding rubbish in here, so it really wasn't used. But during World War II, when our RAF squadron was based here, they were integral to restoring the chapel to its former glory, as well as some other Victorian renovations, and that's why they're honoured on the plaque here. Today, it's used once again as a consecrated space, so services and ceremonies ceremonies take place in here. I've seen the choir to perform in here. It's a beauty to behold. I've even seen a production of the Crucible in here, which was just the right side of creepy, just a little bit. But that's kind of what the chapel is used for today. What I would say at this point is arise and have a look at whatever you want to for a minute, and then I'll take you upstairs.
Seeing all of this students.
You can sit, you can stand wherever you want to. Sorry, I normally try and warn people before, but occasionally that does happen. If your seat bangs, it's not your fault. You've not broken anything. It's absolutely okay. But as a heads up, if anyone's got like kids or if anyone's got PTSD, some of the seats really do bang quite loudly. As a heads up. You've not broken anything, don't panic. So, welcome to the Sunstall. You can imagine what it's like during church when someone does that as well. It's quite interesting. So welcome to the Sunstall Chapel. Now this was essentially an addition to the castle that was added by Bishop Tunstall. Now, though, if anyone's particularly eagle-eyed, they might actually spot that there's more insignia to Bishop Cousin and Bishop Crewe than there is Bishop Tunstall. Why? Because they kind of take the credit for building the Tunstall Chapel, because they added the 17th century extension that took place. So it's a little bit of an interesting story behind it. Now, if you Google when the Tunstall Chapel was built, you actually get the wrong answer quite often, more often than not. Construction took place and it began in 1543 and it was actually completed by 1547. Quite often there's a couple of online sources that say it was finished by 1554. That's not actually correct. It was finished by 1547 specifically, to give you an idea. However, thinking about though the chapel and some unique features of it, take you through some of my favourites. Some of you are sat on them, which is absolutely fine. The seats at the very back specifically, they're called misery courts, or sometimes more commonly known as mercy seats. Has anyone ever heard of them? Misery courts, mercy seats? No? Normally some confident nods occasionally. So they're called such because they actually fold outwards specifically. It's one of the most iconic features of them, shall we say. But ours have a little bit of an interesting story. Now, we often say that the architects kind of played a practical joke on the Prince Bishop and he kind of turned a blind eye. As some of the misery cords have some quite cheeky carvings, shall we say, for want of a better word. We've got a dragon, we've got a griffin, we've got a unicorn, we've even got a pig playing a Northumbrian pipe, and we've got my personal favourite, which you're sat on just there, a man pushing his wife in a wheelbarrow as well. Don't worry, I'll let you all have a look in a second as well. My advice though, when I tell you to get up, if you can't spot a carving, it's because you're not looking low enough, but give me a shout if you can't see anything. Now the organ as well. So the organ is just in the back right hand corner just here. Our organ, the organ and the actual pipes are completely different ages. Why? Because they're from two different organs, quite literally. The pipes are actually older than the organ itself. So the pipes are from a Victorian organ that was donated to us from the cathedral. And the actual organ itself was built in 1920. And it was to commemorate essentially this Durham University College staff and students that tragically lost their lives in World War I as well. So that's what we talk about. So if anybody would like to have a look at anything in the chapel, you're more than welcome to at this point, and then I'll take you through to the gallery. I'm talking about. I don't think it's rude at all. It's absolutely fine. So, welcome to the Tunstall Gallery, and it's so near to the Tunstall Gallery because again it was built by Bishop Tunstall, and it was a Tudor addition to the castle, which some of you might have even worked out as being incredibly synonymous with Tudor architecture, shall we say. Now, whilst it might appear like a really grand corridor, to be honest, it was actually designed to be a room within its own right. Although the Prince Bishop certainly didn't want to go outside when walking from the Great Hall, which is the last stop on the tour, to the Tunstall Chapel. Didn't want to get exposed to the elements, which I'm sure we can all understand in British weather. But remember, this was an official residence. People actually used to play lawn games down here. People play lawn games. They also used to promenade. Now, if you've not been binge watching Bridgerton, I don't know what you're doing, just saying. But promenading is kind of like an upper class pastime for taking like exercise, so to speak. People used to promenade down here as well, or wanted to be seen to be walking. Take through some of my favourite features, shall we say? All of the tapestries from the 14th century, specifically. Now the chest, not the chest directly in front of you guys, just here. The chest that's a bit further along to the left, that's a bit more weathered, shall we say. Now there is a rumour that the body of St Cuthbert was hidden in that chest for 5 years. Now St Cuthbert is the patron saint of Durham, so you're familiar with that. During the Reformation era, it was a really controversial 5-year period where essentially Henry VIII plundered the village building to financial gain. So there was a rumour that during the Reformation, St Cuthbert's body was hidden in that chest. I assure you, and I literally have about cover criminals with PhD, there is nothing untoward in that whatsoever. The likely it never was actually, and most likely it was used as documents for it, but it's a different story to tell people. First is it though, imagine lifting that would be extraordinarily heavy, regardless of what it had in it. Now the thrones as well. So we're not talking about every single chair in the building, but the one to the left of the candelabra, the one to the right of me specifically, and the one at the very end of the corridor that, to be honest, looks like a throne more than any of the others. They are the thrones of the Bishop Van Milder, who was the last Prince Bishop of Durham, whose tenure came to an end in 1837, who we'll talk about a bit more in the Great Hall. But you'd think if we had genuine Victorian thrones, we'd keep them under lock and key and not let anybody near them. But until quite recently, the Chancellor and the Vice-Chancellor of the university used to sit on them during graduation ceremonies. Until they decided that was a bad idea as a genuine historical artefact, and we'll keep them up here for everybody to enjoy, shall we say. Obviously as well, last but certainly not least, what I'm just casually standing in front of, is the Norman Arch. Now, this is the reason why we're a UNESCO World Heritage Site, and this could very well be the reason why you're here today. I would say if it's not, it's a nice surprise, don't get me wrong as well. Now, how old is this arch? Well, we're not entirely sure. We do know that it was built at some point between 1170 and 1190, to give you an idea of how old this arch is. But why is it so expertly preserved, perhaps compared to some of its counterparts? Well, A, it was encased in a Tudor gallery, so it wasn't exposed to the elements for a good 6 centuries. But also, when the gallery was first built, the arch was completely uncovered like it is today. We know that because you can see the entirety of it through the window specifically. However, shortly afterwards, in the 16th century, after the gallery was built, the arch was unfortunately painted and plastered. So whilst it would have looked like a complete eyesore, it did help expertly preserve some of the Byzantine-style carvings that you see at the top in particular. It was uncovered once again in the 18th century and hopefully will remain uncovered ever since. But that's kind of the story of the arch. So I would say this is the point in the tour where I just slowly walk through the gallery. Make sure you want to look from left to right. If you are coming up here, just be careful as there's no handrails, that's all. All I ask is don't go past it. It's locked, you can't get through. Also, it's very easy to get lost down there. And I'll take you through to my favourite part of the castle. that we've been invaded, thus a lot of local militias were set up, and they are from the Durham local militia of the wars as well, basically. Obviously, we've got portraits as well. Now, the first and the second group portraits all denote key figures in the history of Durham Castle and University specifically. So we start with Bishop Van Wilder, the golden insignia at the top. Bishop Van Wilder was the last Prince Bishop of Durham. His tenure came to an end in 1837. He was not in fact called the Prince Bishop who signed over the rights of the castle to Durham University. That was actually his predecessor, John Maltby. I don't know if anybody saw the crockery in the Tunstall Gallery upstairs. That was Sean Maltby, if you're interested. He signed over the rights of the castle to the university before Bishop Van Wilder. We obviously also have the first head warden of the university. This one was a bit more interesting, shall we say. The first head Durham student, who was Dr. Reverend John Colthill on the right-hand side. Now, Dr. Reverend John Colthill, along with 48 other of the first Durham students, what I found quite funny was that 80% of them actually went on to be clergymen, which is quite different to our graduate destinations today, shall we say. Bear in mind as well, you could have been as young as 15 years old coming to university, because the secondary school education system really was non-existent until about 1904, 1908, depending on how you want to characterise it. So, essentially, you could have been as young as 15, and it perhaps explains why the rules were so strict. Gates were locked at 10 o'clock, you had to wear your academic gown at all times, and pub visits were completely banned as well. It's a bit different to today, shall we say. Women were first admitted to University College in 1891, which is extraordinarily early by British university standards. In terms of portraits as well, we have our first permanent portrait of a woman as our current college principal, Wendy. She's a woman, so she's going to hang up here once her tenure comes to an end as well, which is an interesting one. Now, what the hall's used for today, though? So the hall's used today for breakfast, lunch and dinner by Durham University Castle students. And we also have a tradition that's known as formal dinners. So formal dinners are kind of three-course meals with some quite beautiful academic traditions, including you wear your gown, prayers are still said in Latin, and we have some, shall we say, secretive traditions that we're quite proud of. I say secret, if you go and ask me later, I will genuinely tell you.